Sarah Martinez had been counting down the days until her deployment ended. After 18 months leading covert operations in hostile territory, she was finally returning to Naval Special Warfare Command in Coronado. The mission had been classified at the highest levels, and her team's success in dismantling an international arms trafficking network had earned her a promotion she couldn't yet celebrate publicly. The helicopter touched down on the base as dawn painted the Pacific horizon orange and pink. Sarah shouldered her gear bag and walked across the tarmac, her weathered combat boots clicking against the concrete. She had requested immediate integration into the advanced training program rather than taking leave. After months of high-stakes operations, she needed the familiar rhythm of physical and mental challenges to decompress. What Sarah didn't anticipate was the administrative mix-up that would place her in the general population barracks instead of officer quarters. The personnel office was understaffed, and her classified status meant her records showed only her previous rank. The young clerk, overwhelmed with processing returning service members, assigned her to Delta Company's training facility without checking her current position. Sarah found herself surrounded by fresh-faced naval cadets, most barely out of their teens, eager to prove themselves worthy of the special operations community. She kept her head down, speaking little during the first few days of training. The physical demands that left other cadets gasping for air felt like a warm-up to her. During obstacle courses, she held back, not wanting to draw attention to capabilities that far exceeded what anyone expected from a supposed peer. The other cadets began to notice her anyway. During combat swimming exercises, she moved through the water with an efficiency that spoke of years in dangerous waters. In the shooting range, her groupings were consistently perfect, while others struggled with basic marksmanship. During survival training, she demonstrated knowledge of techniques that weren't taught in standard courses. Marcus Chen, a cadet from California who had wrestled in college, was the first to voice what others were thinking. "That new girl doesn't belong here," he whispered to his bunkmate after watching Sarah complete a rope climb in record time without breaking a sweat. "Nobody's that good on their first week." The whispers grew louder. Some cadets speculated she was a plant, someone sent to observe their performance. Others thought she might be a foreign agent. A few believed she was simply lying about her background. The tension in the barracks increased daily as Sarah continued to excel at everything while maintaining her silence about her past. Training instructor Petty Officer Williams noticed the growing unrest, but attributed it to typical military hierarchy dynamics. New groups always had members who stood out, creating natural friction. He had seen it countless times before, and expected it would resolve itself as the cadets adjusted to military life. Sarah, meanwhile, was fighting her own internal battle. Every instinct told her to take command, to correct poor techniques she witnessed, to push these young people harder so they might survive what lay ahead. But her orders were clear. Maintain operational security until debriefing was complete. Her identity had to remain classified until intelligence officials determined what aspects of her recent mission could be safely disclosed. The first real confrontation came during a navigation exercise in the desert training area. The cadets were divided into small teams and given coordinates to reach within 12 hours using only basic equipment. Sarah's team included Marcus and 3 others who had been most vocal about their suspicions. When the team's designated navigator made a critical error that would have led them miles off course, Sarah quietly suggested a different route. Marcus confronted her immediately. "How do you know that's wrong? What aren't you telling us?" Sarah maintained her cover, claiming she had studied maps extensively before joining, but her knowledge went far beyond what any cadet should possess. She knew the terrain from classified operations conducted in the same area. Every landmark, every hidden danger, every shortcut was embedded in her memory from missions these cadets couldn't imagine. The tension reached a breaking point when Sarah prevented the team from walking into an area where live fire exercises were scheduled to begin. Her urgent warning and detailed knowledge of military training protocols confirmed everyone's suspicions that she was not who she claimed to be. That evening, Marcus gathered several other cadets in the common area. The group had decided they needed answers, and they weren't going to wait for official channels. They had observed Sarah's routines and knew she usually showered alone after evening physical training when most others had finished. The plan they developed was simple but confrontational. They would corner her in the shower facility, where she couldn't avoid their questions. With no escape route and no way to deflect, they believed they could force her to reveal the truth about who she really was and what she was doing among them. None of them could have predicted what that truth would actually be or how it would change everything they thought they knew about leadership, courage, and the reality of modern warfare. The shower facility was empty except for the steady drip of water from a leaky faucet. Sarah had deliberately waited until after evening chow to clean up, hoping to avoid the usual crowd of cadets. The hot water felt good against muscles that had been tense for days, not from physical exertion, but from the constant effort of hiding her true abilities and identity. She was rinsing shampoo from her hair when she heard the outer door open. Multiple footsteps echoed on the tile floor. Too many for casual use of the facilities. Sarah's combat instincts immediately kicked in, analyzing the acoustic signature of at least 6 individuals moving with obvious purpose. Through the frosted glass of the shower stall, she could see figures positioning themselves around the entrance. Her tactical mind automatically mapped the space, noting exits, potential weapons, and defensive positions. But this wasn't a combat zone, and these weren't enemy combatants. They were confused young people who deserved answers, not violence. Marcus stepped forward as the group's spokesman. "We know you're not like us," he called out, his voice echoing in the tiled space. "We've been watching you for weeks. Nobody performs like that without serious training. Who are you really?" Sarah continued washing, her movements calm and deliberate, despite being outnumbered and in a vulnerable position. She had faced worse odds in actual war zones, but this situation required a different kind of courage. These cadets deserved respect, not deception. "What makes you think I'm different?" she replied, her voice carrying the quiet confidence that came from years of command authority, though she tried to suppress it. "Everything," said Jessica Torres, a cadet from Texas who had been top of her class at the Naval Academy. "Your shooting scores, your swimming times, the way you move during tactical exercises. You corrected Instructor Williams yesterday on a weapons procedure, and you were right. How does a new cadet know more than a 15-year veteran?" The questions kept coming. How did she know about classified training areas? Why did her gear show wear patterns consistent with extensive field use? Where had she learned advanced medical techniques that she had demonstrated during a first aid scenario? Sarah realized the moment of truth had arrived. Her cover was blown, not by enemy intelligence, but by the sharp observations of dedicated young Americans who would soon put their lives on the line for their country. They deserved better than continued lies. She turned off the water and reached for her towel, wrapping it around herself before stepping out of the stall. 6 pairs of eyes stared at her, expecting answers that would explain everything they had witnessed. "You want to know who I am?" Sarah asked, meeting each of their gazes in turn. Her voice carried a new tone, one that made them unconsciously straighten their postures. "I'm Lieutenant Commander Sarah Martinez, Naval Special Warfare Command. I've spent the last 18 months leading classified operations in 3 different theaters." The silence that followed was broken only by the ventilation fan humming overhead. Marcus's mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. Jessica took an involuntary step backward, suddenly understanding the implications of what they had just heard. "I've been waiting for my security clearance review to complete before my assignment to the instructor staff," Sarah continued, pulling on her workout clothes. "The administrative error that placed me in general population was supposed to be temporary, but the process has taken longer than expected." She could see the wheels turning in their minds as they processed this information. Everything they had observed suddenly made sense. The perfect marksmanship, the advanced tactical knowledge, the physical conditioning that surpassed anything they had seen before. "You're a Navy SEAL?" Marcus whispered, using the informal term that most people associated with naval special warfare operators. "Special Operations Officer," Sarah corrected. "And before you ask, yes, women can and do serve in these roles." We've been integrated into special operations units for several years now, though most of our work remains classified. The revelation hit them like a physical blow. They had spent weeks suspicious of someone they thought was pretending to be better than them, only to discover she was actually one of the most elite warriors in the American military. Jessica was the first to find her voice. "We thought you were some kind of spy or something. We never imagined that a woman could be in special operations," Sarah asked, not unkindly. "Or that someone with my experience would be training alongside new recruits?" "Both," Marcus admitted, his earlier confrontational attitude replaced by something approaching awe. "We've never met anyone who's actually done the things we're training for." Sarah began gathering her shower supplies, aware that this conversation was far from over. "What you're training for isn't a game or a movie. It's the most demanding work the military has to offer, and not everyone who wants it is capable of handling it. That's why the selection process is so intense." She paused, studying their faces. These were good people, with the potential to become exceptional warriors. But they needed to understand what that really meant. "You cornered me in here because you wanted answers," she said. "You identified a potential threat, gathered intelligence, and took coordinated action. Those are exactly the skills you'll need in the field." The cadets exchanged glances, suddenly seeing their actions in a completely different light. What had felt like rebellion against authority was actually application of the tactical thinking they were being taught. "But you also made mistakes," Sarah continued, her tone becoming instructional. "You assumed I was a threat, without considering alternatives. You chose a confrontational approach without attempting communication first. And you put yourselves in a position where if I had been hostile, some of you could have been seriously hurt." The lesson was sinking in, but questions remained. How long had she been watching them? What did she think of their performance? Most importantly, what happened now that they knew her true identity? The walk back to the barracks was unlike anything the cadets had ever experienced. Sarah moved beside them with the easy confidence of someone completely comfortable in her own skin, while they struggled to process the magnitude of what they had just learned. The person they had been suspicious of for weeks wasn't an imposter or a spy, but one of the most accomplished special operations officers in the Navy. Marcus broke the silence first. "Ma'am, we need to apologize. We had no idea who you were, or what you'd been through." Sarah shook her head. "Don't apologize for doing your job. You identified something that didn't add up and investigated it. That's exactly what good operators do. The problem isn't that you questioned me. The problem is how you went about getting answers." As they reached the barracks, word spread quickly among the other cadets. Within minutes, the common area was filled with young men and women eager to hear from someone who had actually lived the life they aspired to. Sarah found herself surrounded by dozens of eager faces, all hoping for insights that could help them succeed in their own journeys. "What's it really like?" asked David Park, a quiet cadet from Oregon who had struggled with some of the physical demands of training. "I mean, the actual missions, not the training." Sarah considered her answer carefully. These cadets needed honest information, but she also had to respect operational security requirements. Every mission is different, but they all require the same basic elements: thorough preparation, absolute trust in your team, and the ability to adapt when things go wrong. Because they always go wrong. She settled into a chair, noting how the cadets arranged themselves in a semicircle around her. It reminded her of briefing sessions with her own teams, though the stakes here were education rather than life and death. "The training you're doing here isn't just about physical fitness or weapons proficiency," she continued. "It's about building the mental resilience to function under extreme stress. Most of you will face situations where failure means people die, including members of your own team. Mar. Every. Mar. Every. Mar. 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 Mar." The sobering reality of those words settled over the group. These weren't abstract concepts anymore, but insights from someone who had lived through such situations. Jessica raised her hand tentatively. How do you handle the pressure? Knowing that people's lives depend on your decisions, you prepare as much as possible. Then trust your training, Sarah replied. But you also accept that you'll make mistakes. The key is making sure those mistakes don't get anyone killed, and that you learn from them for next time. Over the next 2 hours, Sarah shared carefully chosen stories from her experience. She described the importance of cultural sensitivity when working in foreign countries, the value of language skills in building relationships with local allies, and the reality that physical courage was only one component of successful special operations. She also addressed the questions that lingered unspoken in the room about women in combat roles. Some of you are wondering how gender affects operations, she said directly. The answer is that good operators come in all shapes and sizes. What matters is competence, reliability, and the ability to work as part of a team. Tommy Rodriguez, a cadet from New Mexico who had been among the most skeptical about female integration into special operations, asked the question many were thinking. Have you ever been in actual combat? Sarah's expression grew serious. Yes. Multiple engagements across different theaters. And I've lost team members too. That's part of the job you're training for. Not everyone comes home. The silence that followed was different from earlier. These cadets were beginning to understand that their romantic notions about special operations needed to be replaced with a more mature understanding of service and sacrifice. As the evening wore on, Sarah found herself taking on an unofficial mentoring role. She critiqued training techniques, suggested improvements to physical conditioning routines, and shared insights about leadership that couldn't be found in any manual. The most important thing you can develop, she told them, is the ability to make good decisions under pressure. Everything else, the shooting, the physical skills, the technical knowledge, that's all just tools. But if you can't think clearly when everything is falling apart, those tools won't save you or your team. When Instructor Williams arrived to investigate why the barracks was still active, well past lights out, he found his cadets engaged in the most productive training session they had experienced since arriving. Sarah's informal lessons had accomplished more in 2 hours than weeks of formal instruction. After the cadets dispersed to their bunks, Williams approached Sarah privately. Ma'am, I had no idea who you were. The paperwork just showed you as another trainee. Administrative error, Sarah explained. I'm supposed to be reviewing for assignment to the instructor staff, but security clearance processing has taken longer than expected. Williams nodded, understanding immediately. Would you be willing to work with these cadets informally? They've learned more tonight than in weeks of regular training. Sarah agreed, realizing that teaching might be exactly what she needed as she transitioned back to stateside duties. Working with eager young people reminded her why she had chosen military service in the first place. Over the following weeks, Sarah became an unofficial additional instructor, sharing real-world experience that complemented the formal curriculum. The cadets who had confronted her in the showers became her most dedicated students, having learned firsthand the importance of looking beyond assumptions. Marcus eventually made it through SEAL training and credited that night in the shower facility as a turning point in his understanding of what real leadership looked like. Jessica went on to become a naval intelligence officer, carrying with her lessons about the importance of cultural awareness in military operations. When Sarah's security review finally completed and she officially joined the instructor staff, she kept the same informal approach that had made her so effective with the cadets. Her reputation spread throughout the training command as an instructor who could bridge the gap between textbook theory and battlefield reality. The shower confrontation became something of a legend among subsequent classes of cadets, a reminder that the most important lessons often come from unexpected sources and that assumptions about people based on appearance or demographics are frequently wrong. Years later, when Sarah was promoted to command her own special operations unit, she would often think back to that evening when 6 confused cadets forced her to confront the importance of honest communication and authentic leadership. They had taught her as much as she had taught them, proving that in military service, everyone has something valuable to contribute, regardless of rank or experience level.